With Scott Walker's convincing win in the Wisconsin recall election, the bitter left is blaming right-wing billionaires in that nasty Citizen United decision. Did Scott Walker really have that much of a spending advantage over his opponent Tom Barrett? Does it really matter? And has democracy really been corrupted by big business? Stand by for the front page. Joining me in studio, Tim Cavanaugh, Reason.com managing editor, and Terry Jones, associate editor for Investors Business Daily. Here is one union sympathizer and his reaction to Scott Walker's victory on Tuesday night.
We're not just disappointed. This is the end of democracy. We just got outspent $34 million to $4 million. This was the biggest election in America, and I hope you keep me on tonight because this hurts us all. Every single one of you out there in the nation, if you're watching, democracy died tonight.
You're very emotional.
I'm very emotional because we all had a lot invested in this. This was it. If we didn't win tonight, the end of the USA as we know it just happened.
6 hours after that, aliens invaded the entire United States, and it was the end of democracy. According to Breitbart.com's Ben Shapiro, quote, overall, over $63.5 million was spent on the recall effort by various parties. Walker spent about $30 million. Barrett spent about $4 million. Most of the money spent by Walker comes from out-of-state sources. The Republican Governors Association spent about $4 million. Almost all from out of state. The Kochs gave about $1 million. Chamber of Commerce, $500,000. So on the surface, it would appear that Walker had a tremendous cash advantage. Not so fast. As it turns out, labor unions spent an additional, $21 million on the recall election. So you add it up. Walker had some spending advantage, but nothing like the 7-to-1 nonsense that we've really been hearing about. Terry, what do you think about this? The whole idea of there's two sides. There's the prejudice that the right wing has for some reason, like the monopoly on big money. Yeah. So the poor Democrats, they have no money to fight this. And then there's the other issue of, does it matter? Should money be restricted in elections? So what do you think of this?
Well, let's start with the first. And I was glad Ben Shapiro pointed that out, this $21 million that the labor unions were able to spend without really spending it because, of course, they hire a bunch of political experts, canvassers, political fixers of different types, and then they send them there and call them volunteers, and so therefore they're not really spending money on it. Oh, yes, they are, and they just got beat. I mean, let's face it. But your other question is really the more important one, and that is is this a result somehow of the Citizens United decision, and is the Citizens United decision a bad thing? No, it isn't. The Citizens United decision was a great thing because it preserved First Amendment rights. And
including those of unions.
That's right. Unions too now have the right to express themselves either individually or corporately.
All right, AFL-CIO President Richard Trumka blamed, quote, Texas billionaires and those multinational corporations. For Scott Walker's win on Tuesday, Trumka also said that, quote, Citizens United has ushered in a new era of elections, and it's not a pretty picture, because before that, elections were just a glorious celebration of the goodwill of mankind. There was no money involved before Citizens United. Tim, what do you think of this whole issue?
I think clearly Citizens United has made it less complicated to make your views known in politics. A spending advantage, as we all learned during the presidency of Ross Perot and the governorships of Michael Huffington and Meg Whitman, is unstoppable. I mean, if you have more money, you will win an election every single time. In this case, let's remember something. He was fighting to keep his position in a recall that the vast majority of Wisconsinites said was not necessary, did not meet what their personal criteria for what is worth recalling a governor for.
Yeah, I mean, aside from politics, I was just glad that it went down because hopefully it puts an end to this idea that if you lose an election, you can just gather a bunch of signatures and play it over again a year or two later and constantly paralyze the state with all sorts of just nonsense. When you lost the election, he won it fair and square in 2010, give him his 4 years and have at him in 2014. But Terry, why do you think he really did win the election aside from money? I mean, we're talking about some ideas here that are very interesting and a trend that could be very interesting.
Well, look, I mean, the guy has been conspicuously successful. He walked into office, there was a $3 billion estimated deficit, and now they say in a year or two he will have a surplus. He did this without mass layoffs. He did it without, doing anything really radical to the government. He did it by the rules being changed essentially. For one thing, school systems in Wisconsin were buying their insurance from the union. Now all of a sudden they can compete and buy the insurance from somebody else. That's going to save millions and millions of dollars a year, and all told, all these things added up to big savings. And so this is where the rubber meets the road. It was a state in trouble, and they're not in such serious trouble now.
Tim, what do you think? Because for a while now, or maybe since the election of Obama, and even before that, there's been a fair amount of depression in those who might advocate for smaller government and less entanglement with unions and the corruption of the process of collective bargaining. And it seemed like there's really no hope to beat it back. This kind of gives you a sense that perhaps the populace is changing. They're getting wise to how this thing is rigged, and they want it changed. And so I took away from it beyond, again, just the politics of that one election, a sense that maybe the country is moving.
Yeah, I would say you've seen it here, you've seen it in California, you see it in Wisconsin. Everywhere it's come up, and this is really worth emphasizing. Scott Walker is one of the few Republicans who can be demonized in this way. For the most part, we're talking about Jerry Brown here, Andrew Cuomo in New York, and other Democratic governors all over the country in Connecticut and Maryland and so forth, who have to deal with these problems and are in some ways acknowledging what an ongoing problem this is. I mean, unions are finished in the private sector. They're 7% or less of the workforce is unionized in the private sector. Only the public sector unions survive. And finally, we're starting to see some waking up on that front. People can't be hoodwinked forever by all of this guff that you give them about, oh yeah, they get paid more because they're so much smarter and better educated than you, or any of this other nonsense.
Terry, going back to the issue of campaign finance laws, should there be any campaign finance laws? I mean, is really the free flow of money from any individual or corporation, is there a problem with it at all? I mean, Obama originally was going to do public financing in 2008 until all of a sudden he realized, hey, I'm raising hundreds of millions of dollars. I'll bypass that system. Thank you very much. Yeah, but do you see it as a corrupting process, or is the corruption going to be there one way or the other, whether you try to constrain the money or not?
Well, I don't see it as a corrupting process, and I would remind people that we spend far more on cat food in this country than we do on elections. And I think elections, personally, having a cat, I think elections are more important than cats. This is the kind of thing that, money has to be spent to have an election, and both sides have to spend money to get their voice heard. And if one party is, quite unpopular, they should not be able to, to monopolize public funds or things like that. So I would say get rid of the laws. They don't do any good at all.
Also, as Tim made the point, there are plenty of wealthy candidates who have not been successful in their election bids for many offices. Yeah. But going to the trend, though, in terms of unions and public sector unions, here in California there were elections also on Tuesday, and there were cities, San Jose and San Diego, that also voted to allow cuts to these retirement benefits of municipal workers, which is a huge strangle point for budgets on municipality, states, and the federal government. So, and this is California, very, very blue state. So again, perhaps a sign that even in California, people may be waking up to this problem.
Yeah, I'd just like to clarify something. Terry, the people of the internet have decided that you are wrong. Cats are far more important than elections.
Sorry.
But yeah, we are definitely seeing them. San Diego and San Jose both voted for a rollback. These were the people. And in Wisconsin, I mean, we did our own polling. You can look at the Reason Root poll and see when you actually start to put the numbers to people about what they're getting paid versus what public sector workers are getting paid, everybody sees what's going on. And there's a lot that I remain not terribly optimistic because politicians generally are still afraid to touch police unions and firefighter unions, which are by far the biggest graspers of money and benefits. But yeah, I mean, we definitely have seen awareness of this problem. We've been trying. I used to cover this as my beat for Reason for in 2010, and you've seen a big shift in public opinion in that time.
All right, guys, good discussion. That's all the time we have. For Tim and Terry, I'm Allen Barton, and you've been watching Front Page.